Hey, what's up everybody? Gabe here. I'm recording voiceover because the first time I actually tried to record audio on this, it didn't go very well, so I decided that instead of an incoherent mess, I would re-record voiceover after the fact. What you're looking at is the Scotch Road, also known by local Montreal area ADV and dual sport riders more frequently as La Scotch or Chemin Scotch, which I think is the actual real name. Scotch Road here is about an hour west of Montreal, so it's quite accessible for Montreal area, ADV and dual sport riders that don't want to spend a whole day getting somewhere interesting to ride. And it's got quite a story behind it, which I'll try to tell as best I can. For my part, I've been coming to this road for maybe 8 years now. In the past 8 years, I've been here on every dual sport and ADV bike I've owned. So that's 4 bikes: the 790 Adventure, the CRF 450 RL, the CRF 300 L Rally, and now finally this 390 Adventure R. I didn't know about it back when I had my DRZ, so I never tried it on the DRZ. But the other 4 kind of off-road dual sport bikes, ADV bikes I've always come here. It's changed over the years. There's going to be a section coming up in a little bit of very nice pavement that definitely wasn't there 7 or 8 years ago when I came on my 790 Adventure. Right now you're looking at April, you're looking at early spring. About 2 weeks before I rode this, I was looking at pictures on one of the Montreal area ADV groups, and there was still snow blocking some parts, or like at least on the road surface itself. So you'd have to ride through at least a couple of inches of snow. That would look pretty hard packed. Obviously, today we're riding here in late April. There's not that problem anymore. You can see it's pretty clear. It's actually quite dry and dusty. You'll see in a little bit when cars go past me or other bikes pass or we cross somebody that the dust clouds are pretty impressive. It hasn't rained in maybe 2 weeks by the time we're watching this, so a lot of the snow's all melted, and a lot of the kind of water is drying. Water levels are still high. We're going to go to a low section, and there's going to be a very big kind of swamp right off the road, and the road there gets quite muddy. But otherwise, it's pretty dry and dusty, and it makes the surface pretty challenging. Right now, it's mostly pavement with sand and rocks on top of it, as you can see. Not very good condition pavement, but this is still pavement. But it's a bit skittish because sometimes you think you're biting pavement and really you're getting a little layer of sand or gravel on top. That's going to kind of be a trend. Even a lot of the gravelly parts have this like very hard pack under and then some gravel over them, so they're pretty slidey. And I'd like to point out this is one of my very first experiences off pavement on the 390 Adventure. I was following a GPS route that I'd recorded back the first or second year I had the rally, so a few years ago, and I wasn't sure exactly if the route was going to take Scotch Road or not, because I had a couple of different routes out in this area and not all of them came up Scotch Road. So I was just kind of following the line on the GPS, and then I turned and I was like, oh, here's Scotch Road. Here we can see there's a lot of water down there in that reservoir. But that's not exactly the low-lying part yet. We're gonna get lower than this later. Or we're gonna climb more first though. One thing to note is I'm riding really slowly. So like I said, this was my first real kind of off-pavement adventure on the KTM, and I wasn't used to the tires. I wasn't used to how the bike felt in general off-road. I wasn't sure how it would react. I didn't have my crash bars on. I didn't have my big skid plate on. I still don't have those things on, but I mean, I knew I was riding this without those things. I was being very careful. I was going very slowly. I was really taking my time. So if you came here, kind of expecting someone tearing up Scotch Road, this is not going to be the right video. This is going to be me putting along. Here is the much nicer paved section, and here's what I think is some kind of bagger touring bike. I don't know if it was a Goldwing or a Harley or maybe like a Kawasaki Vulcan or something, like some big tourer like that, Yamaha Star, but it was some big, dresser type bagger, full highway touring motorcycle, something that weighs, north of 800 pounds, big displacement comparable to a car, and really not something people would consider to be an off-road bike. Now, we crossed that guy on the nicest section of this whole road. This looks like new pavement. This is nicer than most of the streets of Montreal. Obviously, this was done recently. Like I was saying before, back when I came here about 8 years ago, it really didn't look like this. There wasn't any section that was this nice. Once you hit kind of gravel, it remained gravel until the very end. But obviously, they've been doing some parts of it. So a lot of people were saying that, Scotch Road has been kind of neutered a little over the years. I think they were talking about stuff like that. Here we can see the water is pretty high, but this still isn't the part that I was talking about. We're back on gravel. This part is pretty nice gravel. I'm riding slower than I have to be because I'm not sure. I'm still not really trusting the tires. It feels like they're sliding around more than they probably are just because I'm not used to the bike, and because, again, it's like loose gravel over hard pack. That never feels really great. It's very dusty. The conditions are not perfect. They're not terrible or anything, but they're not perfect. I would like to come back to Scotch Road maybe in August after I've got quite a lot more riding under my belt on the 390 and I'm more used to it and the conditions are potentially a little nicer to really compare. I want to film it again and watch the two videos kind of side by side to see the speeds I carry through different sections, because I mean, I am going slowly here. I'm watching this and it's like it feels very slow. Of course, like usual. Oh, wait, here comes our first big dust cloud. I mean, that Subaru just made a storm of dust behind him, and it's going to be like that with every vehicle we encounter pretty much. But yeah, I wanted to point out that yes, it's a wide angle action camera that's filming this, so nothing looks steep. It's normal. It actually probably looks a little faster than it really was even, so that's kind of bad on the speed side. But you can't see how steep the climbs and the descents are, but they are actually in some cases kind of steep. There's going to be one in particular, I'll call it out when we get to it, but it was very steep. I remembered it. I knew it was going to be a challenge because back in 2019, I almost got my 790 stuck on that climb. I had the stock kind of streety tires on it, and I came out here by myself, and it was the first time I'd ever come out here. I wasn't familiar yet with, the level of technicality to expect or anything, and I wasn't that familiar with the 790 either at that point. Here comes another dust cloud. I let these two bikers go by also because they're obviously, going to go a lot faster than me. A Norden 901 and probably an 890 Adventure go past there, and they leave a nice cloud along with that car. We're also going to go right past an older couple that are doing some kind of work around their property with like a little four-wheeler with a trailer on it. And here's another bike that goes by. And I remember seeing these guys and thinking, yeah, here, man, they're trying to get some work done and everybody's going by with their bikes and just making a terrible storm of like dust for them to breathe in. And that must be kind of annoying. I'm guessing the locals don't love the ADV guys too much out here. It's not like we're helping the economy. There's nothing to stop. We just drive through, their road where they live and like make a mess. But anyway, so yeah, I was talking about the big hill climb that's coming up. I came back in, I guess, 2019 or 2020 with my KTM 790, and I tried to climb that hill, and I didn't like the line that I had picked. And it was less smooth back then. Now it's going to be mostly smooth, small gravel, but there was like bigger rocks and stuff sticking out of it back then. So line choice was more important. I didn't like the line that I picked, and I kind of just stopped in the middle of the hill, which is really stupid. Shouldn't have done that. And, I got off the bike and the wheel was just spinning. So I got off the bike and I took a breather and then I got it going very, very slowly. Okay, the climb is coming up. It's ahead of us. It's a bit hard to see now, but basically it's here. So I'm going to start in second gear, but I'm actually going to shift down to first because it just feels like it's struggling. If I would have been carrying more speed, I could have easily got it up, another 10, 15 kilometers an hour and been totally safe here, but I'm being a wimp. And again, I know it looks flat, but here I'm going to shift down to first. And up we go. It's around here that I got the big KTM stuck. This one doesn't get stuck. I knew not to stop. I stayed on the gas, even though it was kind of really bouncing around, and I could really feel the back kind of bouncing off the rocks and stuff. I just kept on it. I stood up. I kept my knees bent, and I made it through actually pretty easily. This part, I stay in first because it's still going up, and it's going to go up a little more here. I know it's hard to see. I know it looks kind of flat, but it isn't. And there's going to be one more little climb after this that you can see coming up, and then we're finally going to kind of crest the hill. And I think I remember being a little sweaty and my heart rate being a little high here, but hey, I made it through. It wasn't so bad. And this is the biggest climb and probably the single most technical challenge on Scotch Road. Now, the gravel's a lot nicer than it used to be. So like I said, it was worse when I came here, 7 or 8 years ago. And definitely the other times I came with the 450 and the 300, the conditions were better and it was barely memorable. This time I would say it was a little more challenging. I definitely struggled a little more climbing that hill. It really felt like I was not getting great traction. I don't know if that comes down maybe a bit to the stock tires. When I came here with the Rally and the 450, both of them had a D606 on the rear and an MT21 on the front, whereas the 790, or sorry, the 390 Adventure has its stock tires, which are whatever Mitas has renamed the EO7 to. I think there's a new name for it, but it's basically the same EO7 tire. It's more of a 50-50 and less of a kind of 80-20 the way a D606 might be. So I think that's definitely part of why it felt worse on the 390. Yes, the 390 is heavier. Yes, the engine is, a lot revier and streetier, as people like to complain about. But I would say I think the tires are the biggest thing. So, I mean, it made it through, but it definitely just felt like it was sliding around more than it would have if I had been on the Rally or something. What else can we say about this ride? I mean, this is now, after this day of riding and a bit more, I'm about at the 1,000 kilometer mark. So this was a few days ago, that what you're watching. And since then, I've kind of hit the 1,000 kilometer mark. Most of it was paved. I did some gravel on this day. I did this and a few other gravel roads that were a little easier than this. But, in order to get the mileage done, I couldn't be riding around at 20, 30 kilometers an hour. I had to step it up. So I did a lot of road riding. I think I did 400 kilometers almost on this day alone. And now I'm up to about 1,000, and I definitely have some thoughts about the bike. This is, by the way, still not the place where the water is the lowest, although again, we get quite close to it. After 1,000 Ks, I think it is such an upgrade over the Rally as a road bike that it's night and day. And it's not just the engine. I think it's just everything. Even the ergonomics are like subtly different, and they just make a better, nicer experience on the road. But it's especially the engine, obviously. I mean, that extra horsepower, like, it's almost double, and it feels like it. Passing is no problem. Cruising at high speed is no problem. And I mean, it's not like the XSR I used to have. It's not a 120 horsepower bike, not at all. But it doesn't need to be. It has enough power, it gets out of its way, and you can just kind of do whatever you want to do, and it's not a problem. Here, I think, I'm a little hesitant. If I gave it more gas, I would have no problem. But here, look, I climbed this hill in second at 3,000 or 4,000 RPM. And for all the complaints about this bike having just no low end, I mean, those guys are all that we just passed, or that just passed us, are all going faster, obviously. But for all the complaints about this bike having no low end, I mean, it's not that bad. I just needed to give it a little more gas, honestly. And the only reason I didn't give it more gas is because I was a little nervous, and it was like a little slidey, and I wasn't sure, and I really didn't want to dump it on my first time out on gravel. So I was like, I'm going to take it easy. Also, I was trying to make a vlog while riding this, which was pretty stupid. It made a bad vlog and probably a worse ride, so that's why we're doing voiceover now. But also, if I had 100% focused on riding, I think it would have maybe gone a little better. But it didn't go badly. I was just overly conservative. There is a part coming up where... Yeah, okay, yeah. A little cut there because I thought I dropped something, so I stopped to check if I still had it, and I just cut it out because it's like a minute and a half of me like looking for something. It's not very interesting. There's going to be another part. It's a little later in the video, but there's going to be another part where I run into super loose gravel and sand, and I wasn't expecting it, and the front kind of washes out. It's not going to look like much, but I remember it feeling pretty intense, and I did the kind of not smart thing. I slowed down, which is your natural instinct, right? You start washing out the front, you're like, oh God, I'm going too fast and I'm losing control, so you start slowing down. But that makes the problem worse as you slow down and transfer more weight to the washed out front. I remembered that pretty fast. I got back on the gas without, hossing on it, just enough to get back on kind of positive throttle, transfer some weight back, and held on, and indeed the bike started tracking straight again, and I made it through. But it's that memory of like that, remembering to do that, to, keep on the gas and not follow your instinct of slowing down because you're like, oh God, I'm losing the front. That happened a little later, like I said. I will note, I forgot to switch the bike ABS off, like rear ABS off. You can't turn off the front, but rear ABS you can turn off on this bike, and I forgot to do it. And I also left the traction control in street mode. I know the display there says it's in off-road mode, and that's because it's in off-road throttle response mode, but I've left the TC and the ABS in street mode because I was doing a bunch of road riding before. I forgot to turn them off, but even on that steepest hill climb in first gear, the TC never activated, the little light never flashed. So I really wasn't, I guess, in that much danger of losing traction. The ABS also never engaged. I was being pretty careful on the brakes. I have noticed that with my off-road boots on, as I'm wearing on this trip, I have a tendency to overpress on the brake pedal and even on the street engage the rear ABS. I've never engaged the front, but the rear I've definitely gotten to go a couple of times. If I wear my thinner kind of street riding footwear, my TCX like small boots, those won't do it. It's the big, thick, Alpine Stars off-road boots that tend to do it. So I was working on whenever I was going down a downhill to just very gently drag the rear brake and not like smash it and activate the ABS. So I was kind of happy I left the ABS on because the fact that I didn't engage it meant that I was getting better at that kind of control, which is a thing I had a problem with. If we go back for a bit to, things after 1,000 kilometers, I was saying it's a great road bike, much better than the Rally. I haven't decided about off-road yet because I think without the right tires, I think it's at a big disadvantage. Because I remember the first couple of times I came out in this area, I didn't do this road, but I did others in the area on the Rally. I did them with the stock Rally tires, the IRC trails that it came with. And I remember that same slippery, kind of unpleasant feeling on gravel on the Rally with those tires. And then I changed them for the D606 and MT21, and it was like immediately much better. So I really think a lot of my discomfort, here's the part where the water is the lowest. You can see even, I'm going to pass through a thing, there's water straight across. This is really the lowest I've seen it. And there's a little mud and everything. It's not super slick, but it's there. There's somebody on a TW200. There's a tiny little adorable Japanese truck with right-hand drive, and then a couple of Tacomas up here, or at least one Tacoma. People are bringing out something out in this area, in this like swampy part. I don't know, maybe there's more trails right off here or something, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I was saying the tires, right? I don't know if it's fair to really judge the off-road feeling of this bike yet because of the stock tires compared to, the much better ones I've ridden on my other bikes. I'm not ready to just take them off and put, other tires on them, either Tusk D Sports or another MT21 D606 pairing. They perform really well on the street and they seem like they're going to last relatively long. So I don't want to just like waste them. So I'm going to try to get used to them. But I do think it's a factor. So until I get used to them, I'm going to reserve judgment. But on road, it's way better. Off road, I think the stuff people are saying about the motor, at least for the kind of riding I'm doing, which you can see here, which isn't super intense or anything, I think the motor's probably fine. And once I either trust the tires have enough traction or know that they have enough traction and I'm willing to ride a little faster, I don't think the motor is going to be a problem. Really, it just needed a little bit more revs than I was giving it. And I wasn't like not giving it those revs because of a problem with the motor. I was not giving it those revs because I didn't want to go faster because I was worried about the tires. But even here, you see like I carried a lot more speed down that little downhill, and I think I'm going to trudge up this uphill in second. I'm not going to bother. Yeah, see, 5,000 RPM. I'm holding more revs. Already after riding now down here for 15 minutes, I'm feeling more confident. Although I think the sand washout thing is coming up soon, which will affect my confidence a little. But I know I got more confident as this ride went on. Once I'd gotten over the big hill and a few things, I was like, okay, like it's not that slidey. It's in your head. It's not that bad. I remember like kind of telling myself that. Some other really fun things about this bike is, at least for my height, the windscreen actually works pretty well at deflecting air and not pushing it right into my helmet, which a lot of windscreens tend to do. So I was riding a lot on the highway to get kind of to this place and to get back home after, and it did really well there. I was surprised because there's a lot of complaints about the windscreen. It's not adjustable like it is on some other bikes, or I should say like some other bikes have in the category. This one's just how it is, but it did a good job for me and I don't have any complaints. Since I've had the flashers fixed, they're working 100% of the time since I got the 1.16 software version. I also had zero flameouts to report. I stalled the bike once or twice, but literally just from stalling it normally, not because it like flamed out or anything like that. Um, One time because I was startled by a car who like went when I didn't think it was their turn, so I kind of suddenly stopped and I stalled, like that kind of stalling. Here I was checking out the snowmobile trail, but it looks like it was closed. I know there's another kind of famous route that comes right off of Scotch Road or right around. People I think call it the Jackrabbit. I don't know if that's what it's actually called, like a road or something. I didn't do it. I'm not exactly sure where it is. I would like to do it at some point, but at this point, this was enough technicality for me, and I believe the Jackrabbit is more technical. So I was like, all right, this was a good level for me on this first day out on the 390. You can see there are roads that are closed, but I think they're private, so I think they're going to always be closed. Oh, the Scotch Road itself, I did want to talk about a little bit before I forget. I was saying it's certainly kind of infamous. Well, and as you can see, not always in great condition. You've seen some vehicles go by, but since that nice paved area where we saw the big touring bike and then like a regular little Subaru go by, you'll notice that everything you've seen is pretty much off-road motorcycles or 4x4, trucks and stuff. You're not going to see a lot of Corollas on this stretch. I don't know, maybe a Corolla could make it. I mean, going down that big hill or going up it both seem unpleasant in a car, to be honest. But, if maybe you could do it just nice and slowly. Up would be worse, probably. But the people that live here, I mean, it's a problem, right? Like there's not really any connecting roads. I mean, this one, there's a little dead end here, and there's a couple of others like that. And there's some houses at some points that are right off of it. You'll see more again as we get kind of closer to the end. And now we're sort of in the middle and there's not much. But when we get closer to the end, there'll be more houses and buildings and stuff. But it's a big detour to go around. So that means, you're either taking this road because you have like a 4x4 or something, or, you're going all the way around if you need to get to the other side. And in the winter, I can't imagine this looks great. I mean, we're looking at it after all the snow is melted. It's pretty dry. This is probably pretty good conditions all told for this road when you average it out over a whole year. But if you live out here, it must not be fun. I know the municipal fire departments have complained about access and, probably ambulance service and things like that as well. And the story goes, and this is from, some old, this road actually has a Wikipedia article, in English and French Wikipedia. It's not a very long one, but if you look up Chemin Scotch, you'll find it. But the thing is, it links some references that don't really exist anymore, but I remember reading them a few years ago and thinking and remembering that there's a story about like how the municipal council is like not spending the money to get it fixed, even though there's a lot of complaints. But it was unclear. It's kind of implied in some of the sources that potentially there's a story of corruption or mismanagement of the funds, but I don't know if that's true. It was kind of an illusion, not a direct accusation. So if there is something untoward, there's probably not any evidence. There's also stories in the Wikipedia article about how in the 2000s this was used for a lot of illegal cannabis growth and smuggling along probably in the dead areas on the sides where there's nothing, and how a lot of illegal dirt bike and quad bike riders would come here and tear up the surface even worse. I remember there used to be a sand pit that people would go and ride, but it was right off the side and we didn't go past it, so I guess it's not accessible anymore, or it's gone. So as a whole, this road has gotten better for sure. I mean, it's way more passable now than it was, 7 or 8 years ago. But it's still probably not ideal to cross in your like Honda Civic or something, especially those big hill sections that are still loose gravel. Even if they have smoothed it out, it's still pretty steep and pretty rough. And yeah, I don't know how true all the stories are about this place, but it definitely holds a lot of sentimental, like kind of memory, and it holds like kind of a almost mythical place in the Montreal ADV community because, it's a big city and with a very well-developed suburbia on all sides. And there's just not places like this, right? Like immediately around. You have to go. So this is probably the closest one. I don't know exactly how long the road is, but it's a good distance. I mean, so far, I'm at 25 minutes of this video and there's another about, 8 to go here. So it's a half-hour ride. And yeah, I'm not going very fast, but it's a decent ride. It's not just a kilometer or something. So, you come out here and you do this, maybe you go up and down it a couple times, you do some of the other gravel. You can have a nice day of kind of gravel and light ADV riding. And if you live in the city, this is pretty good. So all the people from Montreal know this road, they're familiar. And on the forums, they decry it when somebody paves a new section. And I get why, like as a rider, I get why that kind of sucks. But I put myself in the shoes of the people who live out here, and I'm like, yeah, I'd probably be happy if I lived out here and I had to climb this crap in the winter or whatever. And they were starting to pave some of the nastier sections. I would feel better about that. So, it's give and take. But I will say, if you watch this and you want to come out here and ride it, I mean, you should come out here and ride it. But I would ask, for the sake of everybody in Montreal, we don't want to bring undue attention, like negative attention on ourselves. Don't come out here and speed like a lunatic around the blind corners and roosting everybody and tearing up the road and having a super loud exhaust that's bothering the people that do live out here. Take it easy, right? I think that goes without saying, but that's my feeling about it. We come out here and ride, but people live out here. And I know that's true for BDR routes and stuff too, but BDR routes are massive, and any given section of them probably sees, a dozen riders a day, maybe. But because of its close proximity to Montreal and how short it is of a section and how central it is, I think this road on a nice day like the one that you're seeing today, which is early in the season and everyone's itching to get their bikes out, if 100 or 200 bikes passed, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, just during the ride here that I'm doing, we see at least a half dozen bikes, probably more in total. So imagine, peak summertime, the big holiday season when everybody's off work, the weekends when it's a nice day. I mean, this place, there's a lot of bikes out here. So yeah, if you come out here, just keep that in mind. People live here. Don't be a jerk, basically. Otherwise, I could wrap up with some more stuff about the 1,000 kilometers on the KTM. I mean, the main thing has been how much I really like the road performance, how I think I will like more its performance on this kind of riding once I either get used to it and or change the tires. I think everything else about it is pretty good. I don't think the engine is a big problem. One of the reasons I think that is because actually the throttle response is really nice. So even though, yeah, the engine needs to rev a little more, the throttle comes on and off really smoothly. And for a modern fuel-injected bike, that's a miracle because so many of them are kind of rough on the throttle. So this one, the nice on-off feeling really does help with stuff. A point I didn't make, but I should, is that my levers are adjusted too far out, and I noticed it having to use the clutch a lot more than usual on this kind of ride, that I would have greatly benefited from pulling the levers in a little bit, adjusting them in, so that my shorter fingers can grab them better. So that's something, to do for the future. But, that's the main takeaways. And if I have negatives, they're kind of small little weird things. One is that I think when I made my video, my very first video ever, I said the 790 Adventure had the worst fuel gauge I'd ever seen. Well, that was about 5 years ago I made that video. I stand corrected because the 390 Adventure R has the worst fuel gauge I've ever seen. It's so bad. The reserve light starts flashing on and off at around half capacity, a little less than half capacity. And it's not just a light, right? Where you see the speed there in the middle of the screen, where it's right now saying 35, 36, 35, that whole thing goes bright yellow and it says fuel reserve. And you can dismiss it with a little back button that's on the 4 controls there on the left side where my left hand is. You can dismiss it, but because the fuel gauge, it takes forever to actually decide it's in reserve because the fuel is sloshing around. So it sloshes over the sensor and goes, okay, I have enough. So then the warning disappears and then it immediately reappears. So it's constantly flashing on and off, on and off, on and off, taking up a huge part of the UI. And it's happening at 45% fuel. It's not happening at 20% or 10%. this bike thinks reserve is 45%. It's so annoying. Maybe some future software update, they're going to chill on that and change the percentage, or even would be cooler, it would be to let me configure the percentage in the bike settings and say, hey, I want you to come on when there's 3 liters left or when you think there's 4 liters left or whatever. It won't fix the sloshing problem, I realize, but like it would, if the sensor would make that kind of thing capable, that would be the coolest solution. But otherwise, it's just like, it's an annoyance for sure. Realistically though, I've fueled it back up at around 315 kilometers done on the tank, and it's been saying reserve for, you know, an hour at that point or more. And it's been saying that the estimated remaining range, it goes down to like 60 kilometers, and then it just says dash, dash, dash. And I kept riding like another 30 after it went to dash, dash, dash. I filled the tank up and I put in about 12 liters, 12.4 liters. In a 15-liter tank, that means there's at least 2 liters left. And I got to 315 kilometers. So I think, you know, it's not unrealistic to think that 340 kilometer range, 350 if you're kind of brave and maybe you got some external fuel on the back of your bike or something. If I had the 2-liter reserve that I carry on my ADV trips, like the external 2-liter reserve, I would push it all the way to 350. Without that, I would probably 330, 340. But as it stands, I'm trying to refuel around 315. But it's pretty nice that you can go consistently north of 300. So that's pretty cool. I think that kind of wraps it up. I don't really have much more to say. This has been a pretty fun ride. I'm glad that you got to see Scotch Road. I never filmed it before, even though I've been here a bunch, so I'm glad I finally filmed it. I didn't place the camera really badly or something stupid like that. And hey, here's the end of Scotch Road. Look at that. At this point, you meet up with one of the major roads. It's paved. It's normal. I think I'm going to get off. Yeah, I'm going to get off the bike for a second and just check. I hit a really big rut at one point. I wanted to make sure I didn't ding anything, but I didn't. So, you know, I'm going to have a little walk around, but everything's fine. And yeah, that's Scotch Road. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.